Okay, so in this video what we're going to do, we're going to put in some structural walls. So again, just make sure all your beams have been changed as in the previous video. So the first thing we're going to do is put in some shear walls along grid lines A and grid lines I over here. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to go to the top of foundation plan. And we're going to delete, well, first of all, we're going to start putting the walls from top of foundation all the way up to the roof. But first of all, we need to do is actually remove all the beams and columns along grid lines A and J on each level. So we'll go on top of foundation level. So there's a few columns here. So if you don't have the foundation plan open up, so just go to your floor plan, click top of foundation. You can just drag the mouse over these columns and hit delete. Again, make sure when you're selecting you go from left to right, because that'll only select the whole objects within the selection box. And then we're going to go to the first floor and we'll do the same again. Again, it's only along grid lines A and I. So go from left to right, just bring your selection box over the wall, over the grid line A. Everything within it will be selected, hit delete. And then we'll do the same over in this grid line. Again, just make sure that you only select you go from left to right, you only select the items along the grid line. And we're going to go to our second floor. So just double click on the second floor plan on the floor plans. And again, bring your selection box down, delete everything. And then finally the same on this side. Hit delete. And then last level, we'll just check the roof level. So in your project browser, just double click the roof level if you don't have it open already. Bring the selection down on grid line A just to get rid of everything in there. Hit delete. And the same thing again on this grid line and hit delete. Now a good way to check if everything is gone the way it should be or being deleted, if you go to a 3D view, you can see along grid lines A and I there's no columns or beams there now. So now we actually have space for our structural wall to go in, or our shear wall. So we're going back to the top of foundation plan. So you should have something looking like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you're on the structures tab. In the drop down menu we're going to click the wall structural. Now a very important point here on the modify place tab, make sure you have this option here where it says height and depth. Make sure this is set to height. If it's set to depth, then it might come up with an error, that's fine, don't mind that. But if it's set to depth, then it might have issues with base constraints and all, and the constraints not matching up. So just make sure this is set to height if it's not already done. And we're actually going to, the wall we're going to use is going to be a generic 300mm wall. So on the properties tab, just come over here, click on the picture of the wall, scroll down until we get to the generic 300mm wall, because that's the one we're going to use. And then in tutorial 1 we looked at using base constraints on the ground floor and base offsets and top constraints and all this type of thing. This is just basically telling Revit where the wall is going to start and where it's going to end. So for the start of the wall, we're actually going to have a base constraint to be because we're starting on the top of foundation level, so the base constraint can be top of foundation. The base offset is going to be 0 because we wanted to start at the top of foundation level. And the top constraint is going to be the first floor, because we're going to go all the way from the top of foundation up to the first floor. And once that's good, we can hit apply, and then we can start. Actually, we just not applied already, that's okay. So then go over to a grid line point A1, you see a little X, and just draw your wall all the way down from A1 to A5. And now we'll do the same again. Now don't just go and click I1 again, because otherwise you're going to have a wall going across your building. So you're going to have to just press escape a couple of times, bring up the structural wall command again. Again, just that's set to height, which is good. And it's actually kept the same constraints as last time, which is nice. So again, just make sure top of foundation level is a base constraint. There's no offset. The offset would be if you wanted to actually have the wall to start a certain distance below the base constraint. So if we said half a meter here, that means the wall will actually go down half a meter below the top of foundation level. but we don't need to do that here. So we'll just click on here, I1 to I5, and hit escape a couple of times. So now we have our shear walls on the first level, from going from top of foundation up to our first floor. Again, we're going to do this by floor because it's not really good practice, even though it might seem quicker to go from top of foundation all the way up to the roof. In practice, we just do each floor individually, so we can just check our 3D view to make sure everything's good. This looks fantastic. So we have our floor starting on the top of foundation level, going up to the first floor. So we're going to do the same again, going from first floor to second floor and second floor to roof. Now you can pause the video and have a go at that yourself. You can think about the base constraints. Let's give you tips. So for the first floor, obviously the base constraint is going to be the first floor because we want the wall to start at the first floor, and the top constraint is going to be the second floor. And there's no offset because, again, if you have an offset of like 0.5 mil, that means the wall is going to start somewhere down here and it's going to be clashing with this wall down here. So there's going to be 0 offset when you do the wall. I'll just show you quickly as a demonstration. Now, don't draw walls in 3 dimensions. Whatever you do, always go do it in the floor plans. But see here, the base constraint is top of foundation, so we don't want to do this one. If you're going to do the next floor, you're going to do start base constraint is going to be the first floor, which is this point here. So okay, and then you have to change it top constraint to second floor. Leave the base offset at 0, and then that's basically the base constraint is here, top constraint is here, so then you can draw your wall. But do it on the floor plan level. So we've done it on the top of foundation level here. So let's work up through the next level. So we're going to skip the ground floor because we've got the wall going from top of foundation up to the first floor. So the next one is to go into the first floor, and again, put your wall along this grid line, and then the same wall, another wall along grid line I, and just change your base top constraints. Do the same for the second floor. Again, you just have to kind of play around, change the base constraint and the top constraint. Offset should be 0, and then do the same up to roof level. Actually, no, you don't need to do the roof level, because if you do a wall on the roof level, it's going to go above the roof. So you only have to do it on the first and second floor. And again, just make sure the option here is set to height, and that's only settings you need to change. So you can pause the video now and just do that for the next 5 minutes. And once you've got that done, then we can actually go and move on to the next point. Okay, so hopefully now your wall should look something along these lines. So if you put them correctly, they should be something like this. Now I made a deliberate mistake here because it's something that you might have made yourself. So just for demonstration purposes, when you look into the wall, what you might notice is that actually the end point of each wall is a little bit different. It's a bit off. You'll see the column or the beam on this floor is actually sticking out, but on the top floor it's going in. So you see the way it is here at the top, basically your shear wall should come all the way out to the end of the beam. So in this case here, we'll see the wall going from first floor to second floor is actually a bit too far back, as is the wall at the bottom down here. So what we can do is we go to the first floor level, if yours is like this, and we'll just zoom into the corners and see what's going on here. So we can see the wall actually ends at the midpoint of this wall here. So it kind of ended at the grid line. Again, this is something a bit tricky, but what you can do is you just click on the wall, select it so it goes blue. This little blue circle here, you can just drag that up until the end of the beam, and that'll move the wall up into the correct place. And then we'll just go and check the corners on each of them to make sure. If I made a mistake once, you might have made it a few times. If you haven't made this mistake, well done. So just select your wall first of all, and then just drag it down until you get to the end point. Hit escape a couple of times, and we'll pan across, and we'll do the one over here. Select our wall, bring it down. That's good. Press escape a couple of times and just make sure the corner up here is fine. So you can see that's still a little bit off, so we'll just bring it up and it escapes a couple of times. And we can go back to our 3D view, and we'll see now that's all lined up perfectly. I'm not going to rotate it too much because my model doesn't like it, but we're still an issue here. So it's still an issue on the top floor, so we still need to work on the other level. So we'll go to the top of foundation because that's obviously a bit harder to see there now. Okay, so what we can do is Actually, we'll go to the second floor first of all and line these ones up. Oh no, we did the second floor, didn't we actually? No, we did the first floor. So again, lost my train of thought, but the floor is there, looks fine. Just go on each floor and just check, make sure everything's okay. Okay, you can see this one is a little bit off. So drag it down to where it's supposed to be. Hit escape a couple of times and just check all the other corners. Okay, so you can hover over the wall, it goes all the way out to the end, so that's good. That goes out to the end. Oh, and you'll see if you hover over here, it's stopped a bit, so we'll just zoom in, drag it up, so it's all nice and tidy. And then we can just go to the roof level just to make sure that's all good, but hopefully when we change the second floor one, I should have fixed the roof. Looks good. That one looks good too. And again, it's always just good to check before you go any further. You don't want to send these drawings off and then the wall gets built wrong on site, because you'll get the blame. So the top of foundation level, it might be a bit tricky because the columns are going out here, so we actually need to bring it out a little bit further. So we'll just switch back to our 3D view and see how we're going. So the walls seem to be okay, so it's the bottom wall here is still a little bit off. You can see going from top of foundation up to first floor. So again, I'm not going to rotate too much because it'll make my laptop probably cry trying to do that. So okay, so we need to do the top of foundation. So obviously now the tricky thing is if you go to the top of foundation level, there's no beams for it to snap onto. So what we can do on the first floor, if we go to the first floor level, usually with the visibility view range, if you set the view range here, you see the view range depth actually goes down 1.8 meters by default. So as long as you have the view range that goes minus something like minus 100, 200, 300, then you'd be able to see just what's underneath that level a little bit. So the fact that now our view range is set to a minus level means we can see what's actually underneath this. So if I zoom in, you'll see that's the wall going from first floor to second floor. But if you move your mouse down, you'll be able to hover in and you'll see there's actually another line there. And if you hover over it, see the text comes up, basic generic walls. That's actually showing us the wall that's actually underneath this level, because the view range is actually showing us what goes beneath it. So we can actually click on this and drag it up, and that'll actually be then, that will actually help fix, that will fix the top of foundation level wall going up to the first floor. So we can just go around again, make sure you're on the first floor. We can just zoom in, you can just hover your line across it and you'll see again where the wall is underneath it. You can see the basic generic wall. Just click on that and drag it down. Okay, and again, we only did these on the side wall, so we'll just zoom in again. Escape a couple of times, make sure you're there, just hover it out until you actually grab it. There it is there. So generic wall, and just pull it out to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so now if we go back to our 3D view, we should have a much nicer looking wall there. So if you spin it around, you'll see all the walls on each floor and each level are all lined up nice and light. Oh, have I missed one? I have missed one, so okay, so that's, let me see, that's on grid line I5 possibly, so let's go back to the first floor. Thought I got that, but sure, we'll see what's there. Oh, I think judging by the 3D view, I think it might have been up in this corner here. Let's just zoom in. Yep, there we go. So just case in point, it's always good to inspect your 3D model before you fly on to the next point, because I would have happily missed that and gone on ahead, and then there would have been some issues. So again, check your 3D. Looks good. All the walls are lined up, so Just let that refresh. Okay, so there we have our shear walls. And again, just in case, as a reminder, if you want to bring your 3D view back to default view, if you press the little house button above the rotating cube, that'll actually bring it back to the default view. Okay, so once we've done all that, now we're going to do another part of the exercise. Again, this is something that might happen. You might have your nice shear walls in place, but then you get a note from the engineer saying that we need to change the size of the walls. So in this case now, original walls were all 300 mil generic walls, so we're actually going to change the walls we put in to 175 mil thick. So we're going to select all the walls and duplicate the wall to change it to 175 mil thick. A name to match, so again we're going to have to go and edit the structure of the wall. So we'll start off at the top of foundation. We can zoom out and I'll just select and then press Control so I can actually do the two of them at the same time. So I'm going to go here. Once they're both selected, I'm at the top of foundation plan. I'm going to click on Edit Type, and again, like last time, we're not going to overwrite this wall, because if you overwrite it and change this to 175 mil, it'll be gone. So we're going to duplicate it, and we can call it generic 175 millimeters. Click OK. And then we need to edit the structure here, so just show that again in case it went too quick. So in this, we can't actually change the width here because it's grayed out. So in this case, you need to click on, in the structure, click on Edit, and in here, we see where the 300 is. You can just double click on this, change this number to 175, click OK. You see our wall has changed place, and we've duplicated, we've renamed it, and we changed the dimensions, so we're OK. Let Revit do his trick, and we'll see now our wall has changed. The walls that we selected have now changed to generic 175 mil thickness. And if we go to our 3D view, we should be able to spot this straightforward enough. So just hit escape a couple of times and we can zoom in, and we can see that the walls are a little bit thinner than the walls on top. So again, we're going to do the same thing for the other levels. So go to the first floor, and then you can pause the video and go and do that yourself. But go to the first floor, select on each side. Now we've already actually kind of duplicated the walls, so you don't need to do the whole duplicate thing again. Just select the walls, and from the drop down menu, just change it to the 175 mil. So just to get you started, because I'm feeling nice, select the wall here. Okay, it's multiple types selected, so that's fine. So go down to your generic 175. See what's happening here, because it's saying multiple types, it's actually selecting the wall below it as well, but that's okay, just for practice, so we can change on each level. We'll just select it to 175, and then do the same on this one, and then just go to the second floor and just make sure it's the same thing again. So pause the video, change all the walls to 175, and then once you've got all that done, you can play again. We'll move on to the next point. Okay, so once you've got all the walls changed 175 mil, you can go back to your 3D view and just double check that they're all the same thickness. So that looks good to me, and it looks good over here. So that's now our walls have been changed. We've put our shear walls in, we had them at 300 millimeters, and now we've edited them and changed them to 175 mil thickness walls. And again, if you haven't done it before, or you haven't, it's always good to double check that all our walls are connected. So just make sure we join the walls at the outer edge of the beams, like we did earlier on. So just again, you can always no harm just to double check your floor plans, make sure that the walls are going where they are. I think we did them already, but before we move on, just make sure that the walls are going out to the end of your beams. Okay, so that's the structural wall section. So once you've all that done, we can move on to the next video, which is going to be putting in foundations underneath these walls. So make sure you have all this done, and then we'll move on to the next video. Okay, thank you.